Are you tired of lugging around heavy, bulky tree stands, whether you're using a climber or a hang-on, and would prefer to hunt lighter and more mobile? If you said yes, then you need to check out the Tethered Mantis Saddle and Predator platform. For me, this setup has done a couple things for me over the past year and a half. I've definitely been more mobile, lighter, and when you get into those situations where maybe the wind switches on you or whatever, and in years past you didn't want to pull all your gear just because you didn't want to move it, didn't want to make additional noise and things of that nature, this kind of solved all those problems for me. And I'm able to kind of tear down quickly, make a move if I need to make a move, and get set up without losing a whole lot of hunting time. The other thing I do a lot more of with this is actually I'll still hunt my way through or just kind of go into an area where I'd like to check out, scout with all my stuff on my back. It's super light, so I don't really even notice it, and I hunt to where I'm going, or still hunt through to where I'm ultimately going to set up, which is a great benefit, has been a great benefit to me so far this year. If you're interested in all these things, then you need to head over to tetherednation.com, check out all their information related to saddle hunting, and release your inner tree ninja. First thing I do in the morning before a hunt is, of course, I have to have my morning coffee, and I'm sure most of you out there probably feel the same. Make sure you're filling your mug with Skull Brew coffee, as it is the only coffee company that is both 2% for conservation certified and, of course, donates 10% of their profits to conservation organizations who are helping us to secure the future of our wild places. So head to skullbrewcoffee.com and choose between 3 kilo roasts of coffee and know that you are supporting conservation with every sip. All right, if you listen to this podcast for any length of time, you guys know that I am good friends with all the guys over at Exodus. And I want to give you a quick heads up that you should be checking out some of their content if you haven't already. They have a podcast out called Trail Cam Radio, and they release new episodes every Tuesday. So the day before you listen to this one, you could be listening to that one as well. They've done some deep dives with some great guests. You'll recognize some of these names as Jeff Sturgis, Dan Enfalt, and the Hunting Public. And they also jump into and talk to some less-known hunters who consistently are getting it done many times on public land. If you prefer to watch podcasts, if you're looking for some video content, they have a YouTube channel as well, and that is packed, of course, with great videos and interviews. One of the most popular ones they did is a candid interview with John Eberhardt, and if you know anything about John, you always get the straight dope from him. And for specifically my PA listeners, they just recently posted a public land big woods interview with Steve Shirk, which I consumed, and it is pretty awesome. This dude's killing hammers and getting on giant deer in Pennsylvania, so it's absolutely a must listen. So if you're looking for more whitetail content, especially here during the course of the season, you just can't get enough, be sure to head over to their podcast, Trail Cam Radio, and their YouTube channel, Exodus Trail Cameras, and drop them a subscription or review and let them know that Truth from the Stand sent you. If you're also in the market for a trail camera, over the last 4 years, of course, Exodus has consistently showed they build quality trail cameras and that flat out just work. Of course, the best trail camera warranty, period. Every single camera is backed by a 5-year warranty and even comes with a theft and damage coverage. That's right, 5 years, literally half a decade, you'll be covered by the Exodus 5-year warranty. But more than likely, you won't need it because the cameras are built to last. Welcome to the Truth from the Stand Deer Hunting Podcast, brought to you by Skull Brew Coffee Company. I'm your host, Clint Campbell, and you're listening to episode number 148, bringing you the Iowa Rut Log, day number 5. So stay tuned. All right. Happy Wednesday to you. It is officially Wednesday now, finally. I had said it was Wednesday in the previous podcast, but clearly it was not. I'm getting my days mixed up, but it's happy Wednesday to you. Thank you all for tuning in to this episode of the Iowa Rut Log, recapping day number 5. And I'll just go ahead and jump. Well, hold on. Before I do that, send me a message, Instagram, Facebook, whatever. Let me know what you're thinking of the new intro and outro music. I kind of dig it. It's a little Southern rock, and it gets me kind of jazzed up for the show. It gets me kind of pumped up. But leave me a message. Let me know what you think of that. On to the hunting stuff. Today was a good day. Before I jump into that, it warmed up just a little bit today. I think the high was, it cooled off just a little bit today. The high was like 47. Tomorrow we're going to have a little bit warmer weather, so it's going to be 55. So I'm trying to decide what I'm going to do for tomorrow, because the spot that I really want to be in, which is where I was at today, and I'll talk about that. I don't have a great wind for tomorrow, and it's warming up a little bit. And the action that I saw today just kind of tells me that it's like we're on the cusp of things kind of popping. It's not quite there yet, but the action was good. So today was my first all day sit, and I dove into the spot that I hunted the first evening that I was here, because that was the spot that I was most familiar with. It was a spot that we had trail cameras on, and I kind of knew what deer were going to be in the neighborhood, so I could kind of understood what the caliber was around me. That way, I knew what was a shooter, what wasn't a shooter, et cetera, et cetera. So I got in there this morning, nice, bright and early, quiet, and I was a little surprised at first light. There was no movement. I heard some deer milling around behind me as it was still dark. And it's just kind of nasty, brushy. It's not clear cut. I don't even know if it's select cut. I mean, I think it might have been at one point. But it's just gnarly multiflora rows, a bunch of deadfall in there, a bunch of deadfall in there as well. So it just kind of makes it just really a disaster zone, which is great for deer for bedding. And I'm basically where I'm kind of set up is this drainage, this stream that's dry right now. I wouldn't even call it a creek because it's not even big enough to be considered a creek, but it's this little kind of washout drainage bed that's completely dry right now, and I'm on one side of it, and on the other side of it is a bunch of bedding. And on the side that I'm on, I'm sitting right on the edge of bedding, which is maybe 75 yards, maybe 100 off of off a private property line that then has a cornfield. And so this is an area that John has had cameras in the past. He's had some, good looking deer, some decent sized deer that have passed through there. I think I mentioned that in the last podcast, where every year during rut, between like the 6th and the 10th, he gets what he refers to as a magnum buck that walks through, which is something that's going to be like the 160 caliber or better, classic Iowa hammer. So my plan is to try to do as many all day sits in that general area by bouncing around. Because I mean, this place is this piece of public is huge, and that bedding area is huge. And so I could basically hunt a week around that bedding area on a bunch of different winds and never really burn out the area. And that's kind of what I'm planning to do tomorrow. We have a straight south wind tomorrow, which is not going to work for where the tree that I was in today. So I'm going to actually move to the north end of the bedding and set up on that. And there's another big kind of draw that's right there that I'll be able to kind of sit the edge of. So I can kind of scope what's going on in that draw as well, and then be able to catch anything cruising that downwind side of the bedding area, which that ultimately leads to like a handful of scrapes that I found as I was hiking on my way out. I was kind of scouting my way out the one evening. I left a little early, was just a little bit of daylight to see if I could find any sign as I was headed toward the access point. And I did find a couple scrapes back in there. So this morning, first thing, there wasn't a ton of action, which caught me a little off guard because I thought there would be. But it heated up, and it was a really cool day. I think the first buck I saw, it's always a good day when you can say the first buck I saw. This little forky comes rolling in from my right and kind of cut up in front of me. And so I'm learning here as I go as well. Like, this is how the deer often move. Like, there's basically two ways that they're gonna come in predominantly. There's like that drainage I was telling you about that's to my back, or that's to my back. There's a low spot at one, and like if you go 40 yards, maybe 50 yards up that drainage, there's a low spot where it's really convenient to kind of cross. Now, you would say maybe you'd set up there as a pinch point, but I think you would be doing yourself a disservice, because there's another pinch point that's equally as good, that's right at the corner where that drainage kind of meets the private property line, where deer like to kind of skirt that rim, along that fence line. And that's exactly where I saw one deer, the biggest deer I saw today, kind of come from. So first thing, 10 o'clock this morning, this little buck rolls in. I caught a little bit of footage of him, and he checked out the scrape. He hit the licking branch or the rope, because it was a mock scrape. He was checking all that out. Then he started walking over in toward the bedding. And when he got in there, when he got to the edge of it, he just kind of stopped. He perked up, and his ears went up, and he started targeting. And I was like, oh, there must be something in there. And I thought I heard deer in there earlier in the morning, but I just couldn't see anything because it's a bunch of brush right at the edge. Like I can see into the very edge of it, but then there just becomes a bunch of like brush that's probably head high, maybe it's up to like 8 feet tall or whatever. That's about how at the highest point of the brush. And he gets in there and he's just kind of looking around and he's postured up and his ears are up. And then all of a sudden I see this doe come out. I was like, oh, there's a doe in there. Well, then she turns around and looks behind her, and I was like, that's a good sign. And then all of a sudden, this buck comes rolling out of that bedding, kind of stomping, hopping at this younger buck. The younger buck kind of backs up, and the bigger buck runs him off. And he doesn't run too awfully far because I think he was just kind of curious to see what was happening. So he kind of runs off maybe 20 yards away from that bigger buck, and that doe kind of takes off. I guess it would be to my west, further into the bedding. And when I see this buck at first, it's like I can tell, I don't know how many points he was, but I could tell immediately that he was a shooter. And so he started tailing that doe again, or he started, not again, but started tailing that doe since she kind of ran off. I grunted at him. He stopped. I snort wheezed at him, and he stopped and he postured up for a second and looked at me like he wanted to come in. And then he went about his merry way, trailing that doe again. Well, then just a couple minutes later, I saw some movement in the brush, and he was standing there like he wanted to come in, like he was scoping the situation. I snort wheezed at him again. He took a couple steps forward like he was going to commit and come in. And then that doe kind of ran out of that bedding area, and then that took his attention away, and he went after her. And then 3 minutes later, I saw them kind of go over to that little low spot in the in the drainage, and they both went off, and I'd never seen him again today. But that was a good start to the day. It was an encounter with a shooter. He just wasn't as receptive to my calling as the 9 point was the evening before. So things kind of slowed down at that point. I had another young buck, another little forky, take that same path through at around 1 o'clock, and watched him for a little bit. And then at 3 o'clock, the big deer showed up, and out of the corner of my eye, I just saw like glare off of bone, and I turned to my left, and there was a legit hammer. Now, I'm not going to kind of give the details of this, only because I'm not exactly sure. I think it's a specific deer that we have, or that John has camera pictures of in that area. I don't know that it could be any other deer. I mean, it could be a different deer in there, but I mean, it was a large animal in the trail camera pictures that John has is a large animal of an 8 point. But he is an 8 point that is probably the biggest 8 point that I've ever seen a picture of or otherwise. He's a hammer. And so he basically came in on that corner, hopped up to the very edge of that bedding, and started walking that bedding out. And the wind was kind of blowing. It was a little bit noisy. I grunted at him. I snort wheezed at him, and I don't think he heard me at all. And he just kind of kept cruising and walked out of my life, which was a bummer. It was a little bit windy, so I of course didn't hear him whenever he approached. And if it weren't for seeing the glare off of his antlers, I would have never known that he was there until he got way out in front of me. But I did have a moment where I thought I might be able to play some ball with him, but it just didn't materialize. But the good news is that these bucks are on their feet. They're moving. I doubt that'll be the last time he makes his way through. I just hope that it's during daylight, and in a day where I'm sitting in that spot. 'Cause I feel like, what John has seen on trail camera in this particular area, this deer, it feels like he's king shit of Turd Island in this area. And so it feels like he's the dominant guy in that general area, and he'll likely be around for most of the rut. I'm hoping, of course, they travel a long distance. We know that. But I think seeing him today was a good sign, because he hasn't been on camera in quite a while. So that was a good sign. So then after that, I was a little bummed out. And then I had another buck approach me from the right, again, from that little, what I refer to as the land bridge across the drainage. He rolled in, and this one, I picked my bow up I picked my bow up at that point and grabbed my release, and I actually had him on camera, or on film, and was deciding whether or not I was going to shoot him. He was borderline for me. And he ended up stopping broadside at 30 yards and just gave me, which was awfully nice of him to give me some time to check him out. And he just, when I looked at him, like he has, I'm terrible at scoring deer. He was probably, put it this way, I would have preferred to have taken the 9 point that I'd seen the night before. And once I had made that determination, I was like, then I was gonna pass him. And so I passed him. But he looked like he was probably just a 2.5-year-old from his body, which is what kind of led me to want to pass him more than anything. Super tall, wide frame, just a really cool deer. But a small body. So, I thought he was a little bit young, and my goal coming out here was, I think I said 4.5-year-old or older, I think was what my goal was. But if I see a 3.5-year-old that's big, then I won't be shy about releasing an arrow. And then I saw a couple does come through as well. I was a little shocked they came through by themselves. And this is what I was referring to earlier. Like, I think, things haven't quite popped off yet. I think we're getting real close. I think that one buck this morning that was running that doe kind of hard, she might have been an early riser, if you will, and it's coming in a little bit early, because John also saw a couple does that were without bucks, and it just feels like another day or two, and it's gonna kind of break wide open, which will be really cool, and I'm looking forward to that. So that is the Rut Log update for today. Back at it tomorrow. New tree location, same general bedding area, just a different wind. So we're gonna switch where we're setting up, and hopefully that big 8-pointer comes back through and gives me an opportunity. As always, I want to thank you guys for listening. I appreciate it, and I hope you guys are finding luck here during your rut. All right, folks, that's a wrap for today's show. I'd like to thank all of you for listening. If you haven't yet, please head over to iTunes and leave us a 5-star rating, and be sure to subscribe to the podcast. We'd be super appreciative if you do those two things for us. And before I shut this thing down, I need to give a big shout out to our partners who continue to help us make this podcast possible. Tethered, Exodus Outdoor Gear, Skull Brew Coffee Company, Gumleaf USA Boots, Obsession Bows, Ramcat Broadheads, Trophy Taker Rests, and Dead Downwind. And until next time, we'll see y'all.